Hi, everyone. Okay, welcome to the suit session at IETF 124. This is the new Notewell. You would have seen it already a few times this week, but just a reminder, participating in IETF, you are agreeing to the policies and procedures. It's important to keep in mind that everything you say and do in this meeting is a part of IETF process, so please make sure that you're being respectful in how you are interacting both in person and online. Just some meeting tips. If everyone could please make sure that they are joined so we can have a correct number of who's in attendance.
Okay. We need note takers. Can we have a volunteer of note takers? Yes. We have one more. Yes. Thank you. And today's agenda, we're going to start from agenda bashing. Mainly we're going to talk about suit report and suit firmware encryption and update management. And any agenda bashing? Yeah, seems to be okay. Then we start from the suit report. Let me upload the slide. Wow, that looks nice. Brendan?
All right.
Yes.
I guess I'm presenting, so do I have control of the slides here? Or are we doing the next slide sort of thing? Okay, there we go. Brilliant. Okay, so suit report has gone through a couple of iterations since the last time we were speaking. So I think it might make sense, in case anyone is unfamiliar, to go through what exactly suit report is. So the suit report fills a gap in the life cycle that we defined in the suit manifest, in the suit architecture draft. And what that defines essentially is a pathway between a status tracker and a update client and a firmware distributor. And so the idea is that a firmware distributor needs to be able to know what version of firmware a device is running, and then be able to send it the firmware that it needs in order to update from that version to a desired version. So in order to have that information, it needs to get some information from the status tracker, and the status tracker in turn needs to get some information from the target device. So previously, we defined the document that transfers that information, or the firmware itself, from the firmware distributor to the update client, but we didn't have the reverse flow path from the update client to the status tracker. So what suit report does is enables a co-design of a reporting format with the manifest processor. In other words, a logging container that is directly matched to how the suit manifest is processed. So that allows you to answer a number of questions like, why did a suit manifest fail to apply? It allows you to answer, was it that an image didn't get downloaded? Did it mismatch the device? or did it get downloaded but downloading correctly? So each of these different possibilities requires the author to respond in different ways, but there are lots of different failure modes that are possible. The three that I give an example here aren't actually even close to the whole suite. So, and especially given that suit itself is more of a collection of commands than a discrete set of possible events, that makes it harder to match with result codes. So the answer here is that instead of doing any of that, what you do is you use the suit manifest itself as a template and then use the suit report as a way of navigating through that template the same way as the device did in order to determine what happened. So essentially, what we need in order to do that, no understanding that the only deviation of flow control in the suit manifest is the try each command. Everything else is entirely predictable. So that gives us the flow control through suit conditions. If they fail, then it jumps to the next command sequence in try each. So in order to determine what happens, you need to know the current manifest command sequence, where you are in the execution of an update. Then you need to, like, what overall large step you're in. Then you need to know the offset into that command sequence, which gives you exactly which command was executing. And you need to know the current component ID. Then, if something has failed, you need to know the failure reason, exactly what went wrong, and in typical form for suit conditions, this means that you need the actual value. This is because you already know the expected value from the manifest itself. So what the suit report does is wraps all of this information up in a series of records that gives you a log of the execution of the update, and then that allows you to understand what's happened. So the status currently is that the suit report has been submitted to the IESG for publication. Most of the discusses have been cleared. There is one remaining, and the answer to it is staged in GitHub currently, and I'll be pushing that out shortly. That's the overall thing. One slight thing happened while we were between IETFs, and that is that there was some feedback on the name of the draft itself, and there was a request to make it more expressive. And we have taken that on board and changed the title very slightly to accepting Dave Taylor's suggestion. And I think that that is overall a better match for what we are doing. Oops. Oh, Deb?
Okay, so you've got Eric Vink's discuss queued up, ready to go. You're gonna
Yes.
reply to him on the list.
Yes.
Ketan removed his discuss. I think just because his was linked to somebody else's discuss, right?
Yes, I believe so.
Be nice to go back to him and say thank you at least.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then you have other comments too, right?
Yes, I think I've gone through the majority of the comments.
Have you
Is there
replied?
something, there may be a few more dangling there. I did go through just before the meeting and checked all of the feedback on the data tracker page, and I believe most of that is in fact covered.
That's fine. That's fine. But I would like you to reply to them, right?
Yep,
Okay. So as soon as that's done, and as soon as you've pushed another draft, and as soon as Eric Vink has released his discuss, we're ready to go.
absolutely.
Yay.
So there have been some changes since IETF 123, because we've gone through two versions, in fact, since then. Or three versions. We're up to version 16 now. But most of this is just down to clarifying terminology, editorial changes, adding cross references, very little actual overall changes. there's a bit of a rewrite in the attestation section, which I think was definitely needed. So there's it's mostly down to just clarification and editorial work. That's about it. So for changes since IETF 123, it's just come in a number of iterations. And that's all I have for you on suit report.
Perfect. Any other questions for Brendan on that? Okay, so if there's no questions, we'll move on to the next one. Firmware encryption, or do you want to do Brendan's other one?
The firmware encryption. Yes, we will go to the firmware encryption. Hannes?
Hi guys, I hope you can hear me. Hi everyone.
Definitely hear you there.
Yeah, so the firmware encryption, I sent a mail to the list talking about the attack that surfaced in LAMS, which we believe is also applicable to the working COSI. And the attack here is the following. If an attacker is able to modify the algorithm information in COSI, they can, specifically on encryption. So we use key encryption. As a short reminder, we use key encryption, for example, in this specific case with ephemeral static Diffie-Hellman, and we use that key that comes out of it to encrypt a content encryption key, and that content encryption key is then used, as the name says, to encrypt the content, which in our case is the firmware image with this document. And so in some cases, that the algorithm used to encrypt that content may be an AAD cipher like AES-GCM. That would, for example, be the case for use with DEEP. That's the example we use there. And for some of the constraint devices, we would have to, and that's also explained in the document, we would have to use something like AES counter mode. And that's a non-AAD cipher. And so that opens up a possibility for an attack where an attacker modifies a message that was encrypted for use with AES-GCM and downgrades it to AES counter mode to then learn the secret or to modify or to change some of the content and so on. So that is essentially in a short version of what we talked about in the past as a short reminder. Okay, so it seems not everyone has so like I saw that this is a problem and we need to do something about it. We wrote the draft in the COSI group, but that didn't go that far. Then I brought it up recently again, and Lawrence made a suggestion to apply a different solution than used in the LAMS group. And I put a document together and I will post it into the link to the document into the chat window. But even among the authors, and the authors are the people who were involved in many of the discussions, even among them, the excitement to really do something wasn't all that great. I don't know if Russ Housley is in the room. He surely could confirm that there was this lack of enthusiasm. And so I'm actually wondering whether we should probably use a different approach now, one that is a little bit more simplistic in the sense of adding an additional paragraph into the security consideration section of this document of the firmware encryption document say that one needs to carefully check whether the algorithms used with the firmware encryption actually match with what is configured. So if, for example, in a deep scenario with let's say trust zone based usage, where you would most likely use AES, let's say GCM, you would make sure that this is actually what you get, so that there's no other algorithm information in the message. So you would have to store that in a kind of a policy on the software you're using for doing the firmware updates or software updates. And likewise, for an IoT device, which could potentially support a range of different algorithms, you would actually indicate like what key was specifically expected to use with what algorithm suite. This would also mitigate the attack. Of course, you have to really sort of like do this, because we've seen many of the libraries in COSI actually do something else. They look just at the header information and then do whatever the header says. And that's why we had a number of security problems, including the, that's more COSI, algorithms equals none use case, where we just say, oh, it's a none algorithm, so we just don't do anything. We completely ignore any signature there. So I think that's the current approach, because I'm not quite sure anymore whether I see more of a problem than everyone else does, and so I'm kind of backtracking a little bit. I don't know what the rest of the group thinks, or whether this is yeah, and your input would be appreciated. And I hope the stuff that I was talking about made sense. I see no reaction, so I hope that means yeah, totally same.
Deb's just coming up to the mic.
So I gave him a minute, but I didn't give him very long. So if they have reactions, they should say. But I do believe it would be simple enough to pull this out of the editor's queue. It's in MISREF along with all the rest of the suit drafts. We've got a little bit of time because reports had not even been announced and updates not even in IETF last call yet. So we have time to pull this out. I think we pull it out, fix it. And then depending on how big the changes are, we put it through a working group last call. And hopefully the changes aren't so big that we have to put it all the way back through the process again. But we can talk about that within the working group, or you can look and see how big the changes are. But Brendan's in the queue, we'll let him.
I just wanted to say I would support the changes. It makes sense to me to get ahead of this rather than having it come back and bite us. We're trying to handle things that this is an area where getting the security wrong has pretty catastrophic consequences. So if there is a question here, even a question, I think it's worth it.
So I think there is, it was reasonable for COSI to say, why do we want to do this, right? Because from their point of view, this is a deprecated mode, right? It's not an AEAD. They don't normally approve non-AEAD things in COSI. And so that's why, I mean, we had to work pretty hard to get it through the process because it's basically a deprecated mode only for this particular use case. So I do think it makes sense to address the issue within this draft that's using a mode that COSI ordinarily would not use.
Yeah, and that's probably also the reason why there wasn't much excitement for this specific case. Yeah. Like in retrospect, obviously, it would have been better to sort of in COSI overall to include more of that information into the key derivation function. But obviously, that's we are like years past that point, so it's a little bit moot to talk about it. For HBKE, we did it differently. We took that into account. just proactively to make sure that there are no problems that can arise, but that's a new algorithm, so the story is different there. And if we make changes to the, let's say, ephemeral static Diffie-Hellman, it would require new algorithm numbers, and that may also not be ideal for many implementers. So, yeah. Took some time to get to that conclusion, though. I can post the link to the chat window to show what I had come up with, but I don't think there's any, well, not only very limited support.
So I'm not in the queue. I have not done this before. I will write a message to the editor saying that we're going to pull it and make updates to it so that they know what's happening. Like, I don't,
Okay.
I'm sure there's a process. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, it rarely happens. Yeah, I don't think I had that case before myself. So, yeah. But I don't think it will delay the publication of anything. So in that sense, it's probably okay.
Hannes, who will be mainly going to update the draft? Hannes?
I will make a proposal posted to the list. So it would be like a one paragraph for the security consideration section. Mm-hmm. I was trying to see where it fits best in the existing flow. I will post something probably tomorrow. Everyone is probably busy as well, so yeah. Yeah, the deprecated stuff. When we published the CVC and the counter mode for COSI, we actually published it right away as sort of kind of deprecated, or it's probably the wrong word, but a special use algorithm, because for firmware encryption it's useful, but for many other use cases in COSI, I don't think so. But at least nobody has raised anything, so I don't think it's supported in many libraries. So yeah, but in general, and I think Deb would agree with me. Like, there's a rule in cryptography that you should use different keys for different purposes, and so you shouldn't be just use like a key for all sorts of different algorithms and use cases, because you are just setting yourself up for problems. So, like, irrespectively of this specific case, but it particularly applies to this case. So if you create let's say, a symmetric key and allow it to be used with COSI, you should also have somewhere an indication of in your library, in your application, that this key is supposed to be used with a specific cryptographic algorithm, or for, let's say, key encryption, and not just for anything. And I've seen libraries who just basically don't store that information, and it just iterate through all the possible algorithms to see which one correctly, for example, verifies or decrypts. I think this is terrible. But yeah, we had that discussion on the mailing list, so I don't need to iterate it here.
Hannes, there's a comment in the chat. Another one from Christian.
Yeah. Yeah, we had that argument, and that's there's a long write-up in the published RFC, in the COSI RFC on CVC and counter mode, which explains on why it's used in specific scenarios, and why you shouldn't use it otherwise. So that's I think that's already taken care of. So that's fine. So we're good there, but yeah, implementers can get things wrong. So I think it's useful to say something again in the firmware encryption draft beyond what we already say. So I think that's all.
Yeah, I
all
think
there is.
yes. Any other questions or comments? The next one.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. The next one is suit update management. Brendan, do you have something?
I'm afraid I don't have any updates on that. The feedback I got from Deb was on Friday, and I haven't had a chance to look through it yet.
Yep, that's fair.
Yes. Yeah.
Deb has said that you should finish report first before you move on to that one. So if you just focus on report and get to her comments afterwards.
Yep, that's fine by me.
Mhm. Yes. Anything else for the session? Always able to write anything on the mailing list. And I think that's it.
I will toss one thing in here. I posted a proposal a couple of months back to the suit list suggesting that we should start the process of choosing a couple of cipher suites for MLDSA and MLChem. And I got very little response to that at the time. So I'm just going to use this moment to plug that. Please go take a look at the proposal. Please decide if you support it or if you don't. And if you have a specific concern about the use of MLDSA or MLChem in firmware update, then please do make that known so that we can have a conversation about it. I think that with the standardization of those algorithms, we really do need to start moving towards a standard to apply them, because we are getting close to being undeployable with the cipher suites that we have today.
Hannes in the queue.
Yeah, I just want to, in relationship to what Brendan just said, there is good progress in the COSI group on some of the post-quantum crypto algorithms. So the MLDSA is, I think, in the RC editors queue, and HSS LMS, which was advocated for by the NSA, that has been done already a long time ago. There's also the FNDSA and the SLH-DSA, which are being worked on in that in the COSI group. So I think we have the foundations almost there. So I think that's a good situation to be in. So there's progress. We obviously, like, implementation wise, that's a different story. I haven't done a survey of the COSI libraries and their readiness for PQC algorithms, but I have been working on an implementation of MLDSA in DCOSI on the hackathon weekend myself, and also I need to do the other algorithms there too, the previously mentioned ones. And I don't know if anyone in the group knows what the situation is with other embedded libraries. So just having the drafts and the RCs alone is obviously not sufficient. We need to have high quality implementations as well. I don't know if anyone in the room is working on those. Would be good to know. And if you are working on them, please drop me a message, and happy to do interrupt testing with you.
Brendan.
Yeah, this is just a note on the subject of HSS LMS. There is an unfortunate development that the CNSA guidelines have standardized and accepted LMS, but they have not accepted HSS. And the result of that is that there are some deployability concerns around using HSS LMS, or rather using just LMS with HSMs. The key reuse issue is real. The multiple signature issue is real. And without a failover technique of some variety, that is a huge problem. Unfortunately, that is where we stand with CNSA compliant implementations today. And that's one of the reasons that I would strongly advocate for MLDSA over top of doing an HSS LMS implementation. Is just from a regulatory compliance perspective, it makes a lot more sense.
So the COSI dilithium draft, which will be COSI MLDSA draft, is in the editor's queue already. So that will be, I mean, that just needs to make its way through. It's not been in the editor's queue for very long. Brendan, LMS, they've approved LMS and not multi-tree too, right? Just straight up LMS?
That's correct. That's what's in CNSA 2.0.
Yeah. Any comment? Probably other question might have is this new draft activity for the PQC in suit will delay some other draft to be in RFC? No.
Since I suggested this draft, I'll chip in here. The previous conversation that we had was that would not. So this would be either a BIS on the MTI draft, or it would be a full-on replacement of the MTI draft. So it shouldn't delay anything, but hopefully as soon as it comes in, it'll just push the old one out.
Deb's just coming up to the mic.
So a BIS is the same thing as a replace. The question is whether you want to do an update or a BIS. Those are your two choices. So an update would just update new algorithms into the MTI draft, which should be an RFC before you do it, because it doesn't make sense to BIS the draft. Or you make an update to it. Either way, it has to be issued first, which means you have to clear the rest of the queue because everything depends on everything else. And once you do that, then we can do that. Like you can start working on the BIS or the update before it's all the way out, but you aren't going to go anywhere until it's actually issued.
Hannes?
I was wondering, like, since Deb just brought it up, like we have this huge pile of documents in the queue, like what is the expected release date of those? Because we have the manifest, which sort of like, I think is on the top of that sort of dependency tree. And once we get that moving, we can also then sort of unblock a number of other specifications, including then subsequently the deep documents.
So the
Do we have
problem is,
any-
I think the manifest draft depends on everything. So you'd have to go back and look at the cluster and whatever, but the problem is everything depends on not everything doesn't depend on everything, but I think if manifest depends on report and update and all of the rest of that, then those things have to go at the same, like they'll all go at the same time. Some things don't depend on everything, but most things depend on manifest.
Is there one document that is much further behind that needs some that is still very important that we need to pay special attention to get that across the finish line?
The last two documents are the report document, which is through the telechat. He just needs to answer the discusses. He needs to push a new update. He needs to reply to Eric Vink so that discuss can be cleared. And as soon as he clears that discuss and answers all the comments to my satisfaction, then I will approve the announcement. The last draft is the update draft, which I gave him comments on the 31st of October. So he has not had time to do that. him and Ken, I think, on that draft. And so so then it's just the ISG process. And as soon as the ISG process is through, it'll all be sitting in the editor's queue together as a gigantic cluster, along with your firmware draft, which also depends on some things as well. Who organized this? It was not me, by the way. So all of that has to it all rolls together in some gigantic cluster.
So report and update is definitely something we want to pay attention to get that moving forward quickly. Yeah.
Right, but I think update only has Brendan and Ken on it, so
Okay.
it's sort of a, you know.
But also
and feel free to disagree with my comments if you would like to. So October 31st is when I posted comments to the list. I'm happy for people to disagree with me. I might tell them no, but I might also say yes. So.
And then it's also Hannes doing the updates to the firmware once we get that draft back.
Yeah.
Which
Right.
Deb will.
You do have some normative dependencies on the firmware draft as well.
Hmm.
I don't remember exactly what links to what, but like eventually they all link to everything.
Yeah, they all link together somehow in one way or another.
So I guess rather than writing one gigantic draft, you split it up into pieces, but they all are normatively referenced to each other. So.
Okay.
Brendan?
So since you asked, Deb, what actually happened was we originally had one gigantic draft, and we did in fact split it up into pieces. And the original intent was that the manifest draft would contain informative forward references to the upcoming successor or extension drafts, and that the extension drafts would contain normative references to the manifest, thus breaking the cluster. But then we were asked explicitly to replace those informative forward references to the extensions with normative references, thus creating a gigantic cluster.
Anything else today? Yes, I think that's it. So thank you. We will finish the suit session IETF 124.
Everyone.